Right now, automotive and heavy equipment OEMs are bleeding $15 billion a year.
Yeah, 15 billion. It's a massive number.
It is. And the craziest part is, it's not happening in R&D, and it's not like some macroeconomic supply chain crisis.
Right. No, it's happening right in the service bay.
Exactly. You've got a highly skilled technician standing there under a lift, staring at this totally outdated system, and they're basically forced to guess.
Which is the nightmare scenario, really.
It is. So they need a part. The legacy portal is completely ambiguous, so they make a really highly educated bet. And then, 5 days later, the part arrives, and the threading is just a millimeter off.
A single millimeter, and the whole repair stops.
Right. So now the vehicle is stuck, taking up valuable base space. The customer is furious because their off-road downtime just doubled, and the dealer has to eat the return shipping cost.
Not to mention the OEM taking the ultimate hit to their brand reputation.
Exactly. And if you're listening to this deep dive right now as an aftermarket operations leader or, an OEM parts head, you already know this pain. You manage this exact friction every single day.
Oh, absolutely. And when you quantify that friction across the whole industry, the scale of the leak is just staggering.
Wait, so where does that $15 billion number actually come from?
So that's data directly from the Automotive Aftermarket Suppliers Association, the ASA. They found that 10% of all aftermarket returns are due strictly to wrong parts orders.
10%. Wow, just strictly wrong orders.
Just wrong orders. And that's exactly where that $15 billion comes from. It's a completely preventable financial leak, and it all stems from, information friction at the point of repair.
So our mission today is really to map out the anatomy of this problem, right? Like we want to unpack how this invisible margin bleed just compounds across your supply chain and look at how the top-performing OEMs are fixing it.
Yeah, engineering the guesswork completely out of the system.
Right. But, okay, let's start with why they're guessing in the first place.
Yeah.
Because I think the natural instinct for a lot of people is to just blame the technician, like, oh, it's a training issue.
Yeah, or that the counterstaff was just being careless, right? But the source material pushes back on that narrative really aggressively.
Oh, really? So it's not a training issue?
Not at all. The research states explicitly that this is a systems alignment issue.
Okay, systems alignment. What does that mean in practice?
Well, when a dealership orders the incorrect part, it's almost always because the catalog architecture literally told them it was the right one. Or the data was so fragmented that guessing was literally their only viable option to get that vehicle out of the bay.
I mean, that makes sense. The whole lazy technician thing is kind of a comfortable excuse for an OEM, right? But it totally ignores how fast manufacturing moves now.
Exactly. Continuous value engineering is a real thing. Automakers and heavy machinery manufacturers are constantly tweaking parts mid-production.
Right, like changing the alloy on a flange so it doesn't crack.
Precisely. So a water pump for a 2022 model might look identical to the naked eye to the 2024 model, but, the internal tolerances or the sensor connectors have fundamentally shifted.
And if your documentation is legacy, like a massive printed book or just a static PDF on a portal,
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
The updating process just cannot keep pace with the engineering reality.
Right.
Tracking down a part number revision, what we call supersession, it basically becomes this huge cognitive burden on the user. If the catalog hasn't dynamically updated to show a part was superseded 3 months ago, the technician is operating on false intelligence.
So it's kind of like trying to drive in a rapidly expanding city using a 10-year-old paper map.
That's a perfect analogy, actually.
Like the driver isn't failing, the map is just lying to them. Without clear interactive visual references or a system that actually governs that supersession logic, they have no choice but to improvise.
And in the aftermarket, improvisation is really just an expensive word for guessing.
It's so true. And the cost of that, the wrong piece of metal or plastic itself is pretty negligible compared to the broader economic impact, right?
Oh, totally. Globally, unplanned equipment downtime costs $50 billion annually.
$50 billion. With a B.
With a B, because for a commercial customer, urgency dictates everything. If a tractor or a fleet truck is down, brand loyalty just evaporates immediately. They don't care whose logo is on the box, they just want it running.
Right, they care about utilization rates.
Yeah.
And that urgency is the catalyst for these hidden financial impacts we found in the sources. Because this bleed doesn't just show up neatly on one P&L line.
No, it cascades. It cascades through the operation across 6 distinct areas.
Let's break those down, starting with the warehouse, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. So number 1, when supersede logic is broken, dealers end up holding on to obsolete parts. That creates a massive legacy SKU problem. Your warehouse capital is just totally tied up in dead stock.
Right, which leads to the logistics problem.
Exactly. Number two is logistics. Because they can't confidently identify the right part, dealers will overorder variations or they order the wrong one and have to send it back.
So you're literally paying to ship heavy metal parts back and forth.
Yes, burning your freight margins on $0 transactions. There's no revenue recovery on a return. It's just pure friction.
Okay, so that's warehouse and logistics. What's the third one? Warranty.
Warranty is a big one. Think about it. A technician is under immense time pressure, right? So they force a slightly incorrect part, maybe a sensor with a different voltage tolerance, into an assembly.
Oh, man. Which is just going to cause a secondary failure down the line.
Exactly. And when that secondary failure happens, the warranty claim comes in. The OEM might incorrectly pay it out because the paper trail is messy, or they wrongly reject it, which makes the dealer and the customer furious.
This is just a massive administrative bottleneck trying to untangle what actually caused the failure.
And it all stems from that initial catalog ambiguity.
Right. Okay, so number 4, this one actually surprised me in the sources, the impact on AI demand models.
Yes. Every major manufacturer is trying to use AI to forecast spare parts consumption to prevent stockouts.
But if your dealers are constantly ordering the wrong parts, returning them and reordering different ones, you're just generating massive amounts of dirty data.
Exactly. Artificial intelligence is only as intelligent as its training data. The algorithms look at those transactions and interpret them as volatile, surging demand for parts that aren't even needed in the field.
Wow, so the OEM ends up manufacturing the wrong inventory because their super sophisticated forecasting model is being fed corrupted signals.
Garbage in, garbage out, but at a multi-million-dollar scale.
That's wild. Okay, number 5, dealer invoices.
Right, dealers are getting invoiced for parts they can't even use, which really strains the OEM-dealer relationship.
Which pushes us to the 6th, and honestly maybe the most dangerous factor, the behavioral shift. Counterstaff actively recommending aftermarket alternatives just to get the job done.
This is the true existential threat. The sources point out that 43% of buyers abandon a genuine parts search strictly due to a poor catalog user experience.
43%, that's almost half.
It's huge because right now it takes 3 to 5 times more steps to buy a genuine OEM part compared to a third-party alternative online.
Wow. And the gray market suppliers, they've spent the last decade building these highly indexed Amazon-style buying experiences.
Exactly. So if a counter person at a dealership is fighting with some clunky static PDF portal and they know they can just open another tab, type in a description, and instantly verify fitment on a third-party site,
They're going to take the path of least resistance.
Right.
I mean, anyone would.
And the really scary part is that they form a habit. When a buyer substitutes a genuine part because they can't confirm fitment, they aren't just lost for that one transaction.
Right, they build muscle memory. Once they get used to buying from a non-genuine supplier, they're effectively severed from the authorized OEM ecosystem for years.
Because urgency is everything. Whoever confirms stock and delivery first wins the customer habit.
So if you're an aftermarket leader listening to this, the math is pretty chilling. Even if we assume just a tiny, 1 to 2% impact from all these cascading factors.
The dead stock, the freight, the warranty admin, the dirty data.
Yeah, all of it. In a $500 million parts business, that represents $5 to $10 million in silent, totally unrecoverable margin pressure. It just evaporates.
Which is exactly why the top-tier EV companies and the most operationally sharp legacy OEMs are completely overhauling how they do this.
Right, let's talk about the solution. They're migrating away from document-based systems to these illustrated electronic parts catalogs, or EPCs, right?
Exactly. And this isn't just about putting a PDF on an iPad. We're talking about replacing static columns of text with interactive, exploded 2D and 3D diagrams.
And the defining feature here is the dynamic linking, right? Between the visual asset and the ordering database.
Yeah, the technical term for that is hotspotting.
Hotspotting. Okay, how does that actually work for the technician?
Well, in a legacy system, a diagram is just a flat image. But in a modern EPC, the actual geometry of the part in the drawing is mapped to the database. So when a tech taps their finger on a specific bearing in an exploded engine assembly, that geometric shape lights up.
Oh, that's cool.
And instantly, the system queries the database, highlights the exact part number, shows the latest supersession data, and pulls the live price right next to it.
So it visually bridges the physical component on the machine directly to the ERP data.
Exactly. It removes all the guesswork.
But the real power, and the sources really emphasize this, is the precision filtering, the VIN and serial number search.
Oh, it's a total game changer. A master parts catalog is overwhelming. But if a technician just types in the exact vehicle identification number of the truck sitting right in front of them.
The catalog basically runs a real-time query against the manufacturer's build records, right?
Exactly. It automatically strips away every single component that doesn't apply to that specific individualized vehicle configuration.
So the technician doesn't have to figure out, like, does this have the standard suspension or the heavy-duty one?
Or if it was built in Q1 or Q3. The EPC filters all the noise. You only see the exact bill of materials that was bolted onto that specific machine on the assembly line.
Which completely isolates the user from all the complexity of those engineering changes we talked about earlier.
Precisely.
So if you're auditing your current digital tools, you really have to look beyond just the visual interface. What are the core back-end requirements for a truly modern EPC?
Well, the first non-negotiable is omni-channel and mobile access.
Right, because techs can't be tied to a desktop at a parts counter 50 yards away.
Exactly. It has to be accessible via a tablet right under the lift, native iOS and Android apps, or embedded into the dealer's existing job card apps through a mobile SDK.
You have to bring the intelligence to the point of repair.
Yeah. But a catalog on a tablet is still just a picture book if it isn't talking to the rest of your supply chain.
Right, which brings us to the second requirement, two-way integration.
Right, bidirectional integration with the OEM's ERP system, like SAP, and the dealer's local DMS. Without that, you introduce manual data entry, which is exactly where errors multiply.
Because if a tech has to copy a part number from an iPad and then walk over and paste it into a totally separate dealer portal, you're basically guaranteeing friction.
Exactly. The system must execute real-time API calls. It needs to check the backroom shelf, check the regional depot, show live pricing, and submit the order in one unbroken digital workflow.
And the sources also highlighted how AI is being integrated into these workflows, which I found fascinating. It sounds futuristic, but they're doing it right now, like Magic Pick.
Yes, Magic Pick. It solves a very real physical problem in the shop. A technician pulls a degraded, broken part off a truck, and the part number is completely worn off.
So they just snap a photo on their phone.
Yeah, and Magic Pick uses AI edge detection to strip away the chaotic background of the workbench, map the topological features of the part, and turn that rough photo into a studio-quality asset.
That is incredible, and that ties directly into visual search, right?
Exactly. The AI takes that geometric mesh and cross-references it against the OEM's massive 3D CAD databases. You literally point your camera at a mangled piece of machinery, and the AI recognizes the shape, pulls the part number, and shows the supersession details.
Replacing 10 minutes of manual searching with a 2-second camera scan.
Yep.
But I have to ask, and I think a lot of aftermarket leaders wonder this,
Yeah.
are veteran technicians, people who've been doing this for 30 years, actually going to use AI features, or do they just see it as a software gimmick?
It's a very valid concern. Change management is notoriously tough in decentralized dealer networks, but the reason these specific tools work is because they aggressively eliminate administrative steps.
Right, like natural language search.
Exactly. In an old system, you have to click rigidly through a hierarchy. Model year, then variant, then powertrain, then assembly, just to find one bearing.
Which takes forever.
But with natural language processing, they can just type or dictate, show all bearings used in the engine of the 2024 model variant, and the system instantly delivers the list.
So because it actually respects their time and gets them back to turning the wrench faster, adoption just happens organically.
Exactly. They use it because it makes their immediate job easier.
But getting the software is only half the battle. Rolling it out to an international network of independent franchises, that's the real test.
Oh, absolutely. And the sources offer a really critical philosophy here. AI works best when it is built into the foundation, not added after complexity arrives.
Right. You can't just slap an AI search bar on top of fundamentally fragmented, ungoverned data.
No, it'll just return broken results faster. If you let your dealers build rigid manual workarounds for bad data, those habits become incredibly resistant to change.
Especially for emerging EV manufacturers, right? The architectures they build in their first 3 years will dictate their profitability for the next 15.
Totally.
So how do you actually drive that network-wide adoption?
It's all about the onboarding experience from day one. A modern EPC should provision a new dealer in hours, not weeks. It needs multi-language support so international dealers aren't struggling with weird translations.
And role-based access, right?
Yes, critically important. A heavy truck dealer shouldn't have to scroll through passenger vehicle catalogs. The system should recognize their credentials and only show them what's relevant to their franchise. Cut out all the digital clutter.
And if an OEM actually executes this transition, well, after, say, 6 months, what does success look like?
It's highly visible. You see a measurable collapse in the error rate and parts returns. You see a massive reduction in vehicle off-road time, which hardens customer retention.
Wow.
And you build a much stronger, more profitable relationship with your dealers because you took the friction out of their day.
Which brings us to the core strategic takeaway. If a parts head or service director listening right now takes away one mindset shift from this deep dive, what should it be?
It's the evolution from replacement tracking to active governance.
Okay, let's define that clearly. How does tracking differ from governance?
Replacement tracking is passive. Your database logs that Part A was replaced by Part B. But if the portal still lets a technician search for and order Part A, the system is just acting as a passive record keeper. The human still has to notice the update.
Right, but active governance means the software is the actual control layer.
Exactly. When supersession logic is strictly governed by the EPC, the system intervenes. If a tech tries to order the obsolete Part A, the system intercepts it, automatically updates the cart to the new Part B, and explains why.
So when supersession is not governed, everyone in the supply chain is forced to improvise.
But when it is actively governed, nobody has to guess. The tech gets the right part on the very first try, the returns vanish, and your margins are fiercely protected.
When it's not governed, everyone improvises. That is a brilliant way to frame the $15 billion problem and the solution. Thank you so much for bringing that clarity to this today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having the conversation.
And to you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Today's insights were brought to you by Intellinet Systems, the creators of the IntelliCatalog software. They build illustrated, highly integrated electronic parts catalogs specifically for automotive and heavy equipment OEMs to solve the exact margin bleed challenges we unpacked today. If you're ready to remove the guesswork from your dealer network, I highly encourage you to visit IntellinetSystem.com to learn more or book a demo. Think back to that technician standing under the lift. The machine is down, the clock is ticking. Are you forcing them to navigate your engineering changes with an outdated map, or are you handing them a system that gives them the exact coordinates every single time? Until next time, keep diving deep.